In the year 1587, a small fleet of English ships arrived at the shores of Roanoke Island, off the coast of what is now North Carolina. Aboard were 117 men, women, and children, each one stepping into the unknown with dreams of building a new life in the New World. Among them was a woman named Eleanor Dare, who would give birth to Virginia Dare, the first English child born on American soil. It was meant to be a bold and hopeful beginning, but it would end in silence. When a supply ship returned 3 years later, the colony was gone. There were no bodies, no signs of a struggle, only a single word carved into a wooden post: CROATOAN. That one word has haunted historians and archaeologists for over 4 centuries. The lost colony of Roanoke remains one of the oldest and most chilling unsolved mysteries in American history. What happened to the settlers? Were they slaughtered by hostile tribes, absorbed into a native community, lost to disease, starvation, or something more inexplicable? To understand the mystery of Roanoke, we must begin with the ambitions of an empire. In the late 16th century, England was desperate to expand its influence and match the territorial wealth of Spain, which had already claimed vast parts of South and Central America. Queen Elizabeth I granted a charter to Sir Walter Raleigh, a courtier and explorer, giving him the right to explore and colonize lands in North America. Raleigh never set foot on the land himself, but in 1585 he organized the first expedition to Roanoke. It was a military venture, intended more as an outpost than a settlement. That first colony failed after less than a year, plagued by food shortages, harsh conditions, and conflicts with local Native American tribes. The colonists abandoned the settlement and returned to England. But in 1587, Raleigh made a second attempt. This time, the expedition was meant to establish a true colony, an agricultural settlement with families, women, and children. John White, an artist and mapmaker who had been part of the first voyage, was appointed governor. The group that landed on Roanoke Island was not Raleigh's original plan. They were supposed to settle further north in Chesapeake Bay, but circumstances and disputes with ship captains forced them to stay at Roanoke. Still, the settlers were determined. They rebuilt the abandoned fort, planted crops, and attempted to coexist with the nearby Algonquian-speaking tribes, including the CROATOAN and the CROATOAN. But tensions simmered just below the surface. The settlers were in desperate need of supplies, and the region was experiencing a severe drought. The relationship between the English and the local tribes was fragile at best, sometimes friendly, sometimes hostile. After only a few weeks, John White made the difficult decision to return to England to plead for more resources and reinforcements. He left behind his daughter Eleanor and his newborn granddaughter. It would be the last time he ever saw them. White's return to Roanoke was delayed far longer than he expected. War had broken out between England and Spain, and all English ships were conscripted into military service. It wasn't until August 1590, that 3 years after he had left, that White finally returned to Roanoke. What he found was nothing. The colony was deserted. The houses had been dismantled, not destroyed. There were no crosses carved into trees, which would have signaled a distress call. There were no signs of battle, disease, or disaster. Just the word CROATOAN carved into a post of the fort and the letters CRO etched into a nearby tree. It wasn't a random word. The CROATOAN were a Native American tribe who lived on nearby Hatteras Island. White believed the settlers had moved there, but poor weather prevented his ship from searching further, and that was the last expedition ever mounted by John White. He returned to England, heartbroken, and died without knowing the fate of his family or his people. So what happened to the Roanoke colonists? There are many theories, but no consensus. One of the most plausible explanations is that the settlers assimilated into a friendly Native American tribe, likely the CROATOAN. Some later European settlers in the region reported encountering indigenous people who had gray eyes and spoke English. There were even rumors of fair-haired children among the native tribes. Could this have been the legacy of Roanoke, hidden in plain sight? Archaeological discoveries in recent years, including English pottery and weapon fragments found on Hatteras Island, suggest that at least some of the settlers may have lived among the CROATOAN. But not all tribes were so welcoming. Other theories propose that the settlers were killed by more hostile groups, such as the Powhatan, who later clashed with the Jamestown colonists. The story told by Chief Powhatan to Captain John Smith, years later, was that he had wiped out a group of European settlers living beyond the main rivers, claiming they were a threat. But no physical evidence was ever found to support that claim. There are darker, stranger theories too. Some suggest the settlers succumbed to starvation or disease and died slowly in the wilderness, their bodies lost to time and nature. Others believe they may have tried to sail back to England or further inland, only to vanish in the vast and unforgiving landscape. A few fringe theorists even suggest supernatural explanations, curses, witchcraft, or ancient forces of the land that erase the colony from existence. One of the more enduring myths surrounding the word CROATOAN is its later recurrence in stories of unexplained disappearances. The word reportedly appeared in the notebook of Edgar Allan Poe before his mysterious death. It was also allegedly found carved into the last bedpost of Ambrose Bierce, an author who vanished without a trace in Mexico. And once more, the word surfaced in the diary of Amelia Earhart before she disappeared over the Pacific. These accounts are almost certainly apocryphal, but they've helped fuel the aura of mystery that surrounds Roanoke. Modern science has tried to close the case. In the 1990s and 2000s, archaeologists launched the Lost Colony DNA Project in an attempt to find descendants of the missing settlers through genetic testing. So far, the results are inconclusive. Digs at Roanoke and Hatteras Island have yielded English artifacts, but none definitively linked to the colony. It's as if the settlers simply dissolved into the wilderness, into the bloodlines and legends of the people who came after. But perhaps that is the most haunting part of the story. Not just that they vanished, but that they were forgotten. Lost not only to history, but to time itself. A brief flicker of hope in a brutal land, extinguished without warning. A colony born of ambition and naivety, abandoned by its leaders and swallowed by the unknown. In the end, we may never know what happened to the lost colony of Roanoke. Perhaps they found peace among native peoples. Perhaps they met a darker fate. Or perhaps their disappearance was something altogether stranger, something beyond our understanding. But their story still speaks. It speaks from the carved letters on weathered wood, from the whispers of trees on a windswept island, from the silent graves that were never found. The story of Roanoke is a reminder that some questions defy answers, that some truths are not meant to be uncovered, and that sometimes the most terrifying mysteries are the ones that leave behind almost nothing at all. This was Silent Stories, and some stories are never meant to